Welcome back to another Space News Update. It's been a little while since my last video, but we are back and the channel is 1 year old. So crank up that flamey stuff as we explore news from the UK, Europe and beyond. You all know what to do, stick around and let's get going.
Alright, lift off and the clock is started.
Alright everyone, welcome back. Now, this is going to be a slightly longer intro, so if you do want to skip ahead to the news, then feel free to do so using the scroll bar down below. So, as I said at the outset, it's been a couple of weeks since my last video, and I just want to give a massive shout out to all my supporters across every single platform that I'm on. Your support has really meant the world and it's kept me going here. I also want to give a massive shout out to my loyal Patreon supporters and supporters on X or Twitter, specifically Chris, the Jims, Okies and the entire team at TSMG for sticking with me as I went and dealt with some stuff. Anyway, speaking of that, your support does mean more now than it ever has before because we are so close to reaching that first milestone on YouTube to grow the channel into something even bigger and even better, opening up whole new levels for us here. And that is really crucial as we try and bring UK space news to as wide an audience as possible. So, you know what to do. Click that subscribe button if you've not already done so, give the video a like, comment where you can, let's watch everything that we possibly can to get all of the hours up, and even more so, if you do want to consider becoming a Patreon supporter, then click the link in the description below for exclusive benefits not posted anywhere else, from behind the scenes to Kerbal Space Program shenanigans, and even exclusive mini space news updates. As I said there, your support really does mean the world and I can't thank you all enough. Anyway, we are back! Yeah, the channel is 1 year old and I'm hoping that year 2 is going to be even bigger, even better. So let's dive in and see what's been happening over the past few weeks. Now, we have to of course start with Saxavord Spaceport. For those of you that are new to the channel, Saxavord Spaceport is located on the island of Unst in Shetland, which is the most northerly part of the UK, and it's a part of Scotland. Now, I've had quite a lot of questions over the past couple of weeks as to what's happened with Saxavord. If you cast your mind back to my previous video, and if you've not seen it, then there will be a link provided, so do go and check that out. Remember, over the summer, the progress at Saxavord was absolutely incredible, and we were getting more, videos, more photographs than ever before, showing the progress of Launchpad Fredo, and crucially, that rocket hangar just down the road a little bit. All of the infrastructure seemed to be getting into place, with progress really ramping up. Now, all of that stopped around August for some unknown reason. Questions were certainly asked as to what was going on. And that was followed up by an article in one of the Shetland newspapers saying that contractors had been sent home. Now, the official word from the team at Saxavord, or officially Shetland Space Centre Limited, the parent company behind Saxavord, owned by Debbie and Frank Strang and a whole bunch of other directors. They said that they were sending the contractors home because work was so far ahead of schedule that they were giving them some much needed time off. However, various things began to be uncovered, including an article I mentioned in the previous video by Andrew Parsonsons, indicating that the £139 million debt facility required to keep construction going, that Frank Strang had told a parliamentary committee months before that had been in place, was in fact not in place. And there was no debt facility. Now, that debt facility is quite crucial because, quite frankly, undertaking such a massive construction project like this requires some modifications to the finances, shall we say. If you don't have the immediate capital, then basically having a really rather large overdraft is going to help you cover those costs and mean that when you start making money later on, you can pay the banks back. Now, the real question is whether that debt facility was in place at all, or whether they were operating on some kind of verbal agreement before Frank went to the committee to discuss granting Saxavord their spaceport operator's license. Now, in the interim period, Saxavord has received private funding just to keep the lights on. They also received funding from the UK Space Agency and the European Space Agency as part of the Boost programme to complete works at Launchpad Fredo. That being said, not much appears to have changed. We don't really know what's happened to the underground infrastructure, but certainly on the top sides, it still looks like a large bit of concrete with that steel launch stool in place. There's no stabilization tower, which I've speculated about before. There's no sign of any kind of lifting facility to get the rockets off the ground onto the launch stool, although we can surmise that they might be using a crane, which would only be logical and far cheaper. But, there are still none of the other buildings in place. However, one good bit of news did come out thanks to the Saxa Voice newsletter, which is a quarterly publication widely available on Saxavor's website and social media. In that we saw this picture of the rocket hangar. I remember when we last saw it, you could still very much see inside, so it's really pleasing to see that the exterior fabric of the building is now in place. And within that newsletter, it said that works are ongoing to outfit the interior. That rocket hangar is really quite crucial, as that's where payloads will be mated with their fairings, which will then be mated with their launch vehicles prior to being sent out to the launch pad. If we didn't have that rocket hangar, the only real way to get your rockets and your payloads to Shetland is to ship it by sea, which isn't really advisable when you're dealing with the North Sea. The last thing that you actually want is to have that payload sat in that fairing and subject to all the violent tendencies of the open waters. You can't fly the rocket in as a whole because, quite frankly, the runways aren't big enough and they wouldn't support the size of aircraft needed to land the rocket in Shetland. So boat is the only way to go. Unless you've got a rocket hangar where you can ship everything separately and build it all on site. We also had various other mentions and articles and interviews from ministers in UK government that have visited Saxavord, and of course they've all given the political, everything's moving along, we're happy with the progress, etc, etc. But within the past few weeks, there have been other articles from various sources coming out, including Andrew Parsonson again, with the mention that Shetland Space Centre Limited are £1 million in debt to the main contractors responsible for actually building the spaceport, DITT. That's £1 million that Shetland Space Centre Limited doesn't currently have. So work appears to have ground to a halt. No contractors are on site as far as we can see, as far as we've been told. And once again, the line that's coming out is very similar to the line that came out before, that work is progressing nicely and to such a pace that we can afford to send them all home. However, that really doesn't appear to be the case, and it's worrying times indeed. Not only that, but remember, High Impulse of Germany were looking forward to carrying out the first launch of their suborbital SR-75 sounding rocket from Saxavord. They received their operator's license themselves from the Civil Aviation Authority months ago. That allowed them one launch of the SR-75 anytime between December 2023 and November 2024. So we were all looking forward to the fact that we're now a few weeks from December, and could we be seeing this launch? No, not anytime soon, because High Impulse have moved the maiden launch to Australia in the spring of 2024. The maiden launch from Saxavord of the SR-75 is now scheduled for August 2024, more than a year after that license was granted by the CAA. Again, worrying times indeed. Rocket Factory Augsburg are still holding out hope, and they have not moved the scheduled maiden launch of the RFA-1 orbital class rocket, which is due to take off around about spring 2024. That's only about 4 or 5 months away. But if Saxavord are in deep, deep trouble, we might not even get there. Now, I'm still very optimistic about SaxaVord, and there's nothing that can't be overcome. When it comes to finances, yeah, they're going to have to look for different ways and means to secure the future of the site. Could we see the UK government and even the European Space Agency step in to bail them out just a little bit? Well, it's possible. It's also possible that further international private investors come on board in order to secure further funding to continue operations. Let's keep our fingers crossed for the future of SaxaVord. Now, of course, one of the biggest stories over the past few weeks and month even is that the UK Space Agency have teamed up with Axiom Space to afford British astronauts a place in space. This is going to be really good news for the likes of Rosemary Coogan, Megan Christian, possibly John McFall, and one Tim Peake. Now, if you cast your mind back to the beginning of this year, I did a video about Tim Peake, who announced that he was retiring as an active astronaut. He was, of course, a member of the European Space Agency's astronaut corps, like Rosemary and Megan and John. But he's stepped back from official astronaut duties to become an ambassador for the UK space industry. Now, however, with this new agreement in place, yeah, he's been touting himself back out on British daytime television, saying that he would love the chance to go back into space. And quite frankly, who can blame him? It's a shame that he never got to go to space more than once, so any opportunity to get him flying again would be well received. Axiom Space, as I'm sure you're all aware, are a private space company, much like SpaceX, who have been undertaking private missions to the International Space Station with their corps of astronauts. They are the Axiom crewed missions, and they've had a couple of those flying SpaceX. It's gone really well. But they have grander plans to build a fully privately funded space station. To do that, they are going to build individual modules, fly them up and attach them to the International Space Station, and test them out on orbit until the ISS is decommissioned. From there, they're going to detach the modules and join them all up together to form their own space station. And this is where the agreement comes in, because between when the modules are attached to the ISS and when they are their own little kind of orbiting facility, British astronauts are going to get the chance to actually fly to this and make use and carry out scientific experiments in space. Now, I'm sure that this is going to be developing over the years, but the UK Space Agency does seem to now be coming on board with the idea of having their own astronaut program. British astronauts currently only really have two options as far as space travel goes. That's ESA and NASA. If the UK Space Agency was to start their own astronaut corps, with agreements like this in place, that would bode very, very well indeed. And to be honest, we're all about inspiring the next generation of explorers, of scientists, and astronauts. So if we can get the chance to send our future generations to space from right here in the UK, why not jump on board with that? So yeah, this one's going to take a few years to develop, but it does bode well. And you know, all these astronauts that we've got holding out hopes of getting their place in space are almost just about assured of that. Now, also from this past week, we turn to Alba Orbital, who had their latest rideshare mission aboard SpaceX with Transporter 9. On board were multiple small satellites from across Europe, including the successor to ROM2, that being ROM3. Of course, these satellites are all contained within their AlbaPod clusters, and it was another successful showing for Alba and their teaming up with these various schools and agencies across the world to ensure ready-made, easier access to space for a fraction of the cost. Again, you know, these SpaceX transporter missions are fantastic because on this one, it's been widely touted that there were loads of small satellites and it makes access to space easier. For us here, yeah, any way of getting satellites to space that were built in the UK is fantastic, and we'll continue to see that until the likes of Orbx and Skyrora come online. Now, speaking of Skyrora, they announced a new partnership with CGI Global and Viasat to provide in-range technology for in-space telemetry over Viasat's Alera L-band SATCOMS network. This is going to provide a continuous stream of telemetry data from launch to mission end for the Skylark L, and to be honest, it represents a great bit of business for Skyrora, who are plugging away nicely in preparation for their next launch of that suborbital vehicle, as well as putting the finishing touches to the first Skyrora XL orbital class rocket. Their 3D printed Skyforce engines are currently nearing qualification, and I'm expecting a little tidbit of news on that front to come out very, very soon. But it's encouraging to see Skyrora continuing to make partnerships across the world to further their business and give them a better chance of completing their launch vehicle programs. Now, speaking of that little tidbit of news, if you weren't aware, the UK Space Conference is currently happening right now, as of the time of this recording, in Belfast. There are hundreds of companies from across the UK taking part in this conference at the moment, and I'm expecting some really rather good announcements to come out of that. So, hopefully by the time the next video is released on this channel, we will have further information for you on that one. Now, going back a wee bit to October the 6th, and SatView, formerly known as Satellite View, purveyors of the world's thermometer, and covered a lot on this channel. They showcased first light imagery from HotSat-1, captured during its ongoing in-orbit testing and commissioning phase. Well, in fact, that testing and commissioning phase is now actually over, and they are fully operational, ready to take on customers from across the world. However, these satellite images were absolutely fantastic because on board HotSat-1 is the highest resolution commercial thermal sensor ever put into orbit, which was able to capture the stunning images you're seeing on screen now. HotSat-1 even managed to monitor the temperature changes from a moving train as it passed through downtown Chicago. So if that wasn't cool and an amazing demonstration of what this technology can do, then I don't know what is. Yeah, I'm a big supporter of SatView, as we know if you've been a long-time viewer of this channel, and I wish them ongoing success as they get set to launch another 7 HotSats and form their own thermal constellation. And in wrapping up for this one, I had the chance recently to sit down with Khurram Hussain, the operations manager at Ambasat, to talk about one of the most exciting projects, to me at the very least, ongoing in the UK space industry right now. I will be sharing a lot more on that one in a future video as I put that together, but I'm really excited about this project and I can't wait to share you the information. For those that don't know about Ambasat, well, a little bit about them. They manufacture some of the smallest satellites currently available in the world. Their starter kits can be bought from anywhere for the low price of £199, offering you a very affordable way of getting to orbit. Now, these satellites are very, very small indeed. And in fact, as I take this piece of card here, they're about this big. That's 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters and no thinner than this. They're taking the concept of a Raspberry Pi almost, allowing you to manufacture your own motherboard, which forms its own satellite. It's capable of doing various scientific experiments in orbit. One of the cool things about this is within their own CubeSat, they can fit up to 100 of these satellites, all without interfering with one another. So yeah, I'm super excited to be bringing you that in a future video. I can't wait for it. I also cannot thank you enough for sticking with me here on this channel. I hope you've enjoyed this little roundup of news from the past week. What do you think? What do you think about the situation ongoing at SaxaVord at the moment? Is it worrying times, or is it just one step back to take another step forward? Let me know in the comments below. If you're not already, do subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let's make year 2 for this channel even bigger, even better. I can't thank you all enough for watching. I've been Tom June, and I'll see you next time.